Perimeter Solutions is a pioneer in fluorine-free foam technology. Our research and development team has a long and successful track record of innovation, introducing our first fluorine-free foam concentrate more than 20 years ago. We have been leading the way ever since introducing the first UL-listed fluorine-free foam and the first UL-listed, FM-approved, alcohol-resistant synthetic fluorine-free foam. From hydrocarbon fuels to alcohol-resistant foams, training solutions, and Class A fires, our fluorine-free line has you covered. Learn more about our industry-leading fluorine-free foam concentrates at perimeter-solutions.com. That's perimeter-solutions.com.
Welcome to ChemLine, inside the chemical distribution industry. I'm your host, Eric Byer. Each episode, we take on topics that you need to know as they relate to the chemical distribution industry and how they could affect your business and even your everyday life. Chemicals play a pivotal role in modern civilization, and we invite you to join us as we dive into the challenges and innovations that ensure the safe and efficient distribution of chemicals wherever they are needed. In our final episode of Season 2, we're diving into per and polyfluoroalkyl substances, otherwise known as PFAS. We'll start with, what is PFAS? What are some of the key challenges that the chemical distribution industry faces when it comes to PFAS? How are insurance requirements changing for our industry, and how you can better prepare for potential risks associated with PFAS contamination. Joining me today to discuss these pressing questions are two experts in the industry. Steve Kowkabany leads Vertex's fire protection engineering and life safety consulting practice. With over 25 years experience, he has worked across industries such as pulp and paper, power generation, and film manufacturing. Transitioning into fire protection, he has designed systems for over 500 facilities, specializing in industrial, petrochemical, residential, military, and commercial sectors. Mark Siem is the business development manager for Perimeter Solutions, a leading global provider of high-quality lubricant additives and firefighting chemicals. With 18 years of experience in the industry, Mark has a deep expertise in testing and formulating firefighting foams and has obtained 6 patents in firefighting chemistry and formulations. Gentlemen, thank you both for joining us today. We appreciate the opportunity to connect and talk about the lovely topic of PFAS. One of the things that's always interesting to me is just how much this topic in particular has evolved over time. When I started here 11 years ago, PFAS was a dirty word, pardon the expression, but it was one where people really kept their head in the sand. Now we're seeing active litigation from states. We're seeing Congress trying to figure out what to do with it. We see the trial lawyers going after companies. We see the insurance industry writing out protection for environmental coverage throughout many of our member companies when it comes to having any kind of foam in your fire suppression systems that have PFAS. It's a big issue. So I'd love to kind of get a quick take from you guys, both of you, as to how we've gotten to this point over the last few years with your expertise and knowledge and background. And Steve, maybe we'll go with you first.
Eric, yeah, thanks for having me. Good intro. And like you said, it's something that just really wasn't on the radar much for really the majority of the history of these chemicals, since they were accidentally discovered in the late 30s. With Teflon, super useful chemical. We use it all throughout our daily, or have used it traditionally throughout our daily lives with, non-stick, cookware, clothing, all these things. And, we're having this conversation. If we had it 30 years ago, we'd be talking about how amazing the family of these fluorocarbon chemicals are and how useful they are, especially for firefighting foam in my industry, what I was trained on back in the day when I was in the fire brigade. But now, like you said, in recent years, really starting in the late 90s, recognizing the toxicity of it, starting really more regulatorily in Europe, where they've kind of phased these out. Maybe 15 years ago, we really started focusing on this 10 plus, about 10-ish years ago, we started trying to go to the more, in my industry, firefighting foams, more the short chain type foams, the C6s and things like that. And of course, it's gotten, it's advancing more and more as we're recognizing just how much of this there is. It's in our water supplies, in our blood, and just the compounding evidence. And of course, the insurance and regulatory and legal drivers of this is there's accidental releases, things like that. So it's really just it's just ramped up, and it's really a lot of what we do these days, because there's a huge change to be made, switching, again, in my industry, which is a small fraction of PFAS created chemicals where Mark and I work, but yet as far as being a conduit to the environment, it's a big way. Firefighting foam is how it gets into the ground and the water a lot. So it's been a big issue for us is, getting these things replaced, retrofitted, removed, and all of that over recent years.
Good deal. Thanks, Steve. Mark?
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot to add to that, but just a few things there. So in the firefighting industry, the fluorinated material or PFAS material, I like to emphasize the ending of that because PFOA, PFAS, and PFAS kind of sound similar, especially if you're from the East Coast.
Right, the accents, right?
Yeah, so I like to say PFAS, enunciate those. So that kind of came into the firefighting industry and like right around 1964. The Navy started using it, and it had been in the industry for a long time. And then, we started seeing this change in right around 2006, where the EPA came out with the 2010-2015 PFOA product stewardship program. Basically talked about reducing and eventually eliminating PFOA in fluorinated products. And that kind of shifted from a PFOA to a PFAS issue. And just a little bit on what Steve said is that, in firefighting foam, it only takes up about 4% of all the PFAS that's used based on a study that was done in 2020. So we're a very small part, but like you said, it's discharged into the POTW or onto the ground, so it's into the environment.
So, Mark, you just touched on something that people don't realize is just how minimal the impact that PFOA and PFAS related family of chemicals actually really do get into everything that we see and touch. And it's in everybody. It's one of those things where people have to understand that. But it is such an infinitesimal part where it almost assuredly will not affect you. This kind of raises we have some questions here that we were talking to you guys about, but I'm going to kind of bind them together. There are obviously challenges our industry has to deal with when it comes from a compliance and a regulatory and an insurance side, but there's also just the challenges of perception and what people see and understand through whether it's the mainstream media or social media and what the reality is in terms of the true data that says here's what the impact is. I'd love to get your guys' thoughts on this because there's such a PR nightmare perception that Teflon is the devil incarnate, and you guys are all going to die because you were having, eggs on Teflon pans in the 70s and 80s when I grew up in Jersey, and that, that kind of thing. People just don't realize that's not going to be the case. So maybe you guys could kind of help talk us through how we've gotten to this point in terms of just, the PR behind it seems crazy. And what are the challenges you think from a PR perspective, but also kind of a regulatory perspective that the folks in the chemical industry have to watch out for?
Yeah, I'll start out on that one. So it's pretty interesting because right around 10 years ago, detecting for PFAS in the parts per million was a fantastic thing, and that's where the limit of detection was part per million. I'm just going to use that as a round number, part per million. Everyone said, okay, we're setting our limit at a part per million, and that's acceptable. And then since then, now we're in 2025, and they're looking at parts per trillion. And even in some drinking water standards, looking at parts per quadrillion. So the perception is that none of it's good for you. But as that limit of detection goes down and down and down, that tends to be the new quote unquote safe limit or safe amount of exposure. So that's kind of interesting how that's playing out.
Steve, any thoughts?
Yeah, it's again, it's not one of those. It's not one of those things where the science has progressed along with it. We know it's toxic. I mean, you hear about like the Teflon flu and things like that, and we're trying to get away from cookware. It's one of those things that makes our modern life really, really convenient. But we found out there is this toxic component. It's not something that, you're going to try to immediately remove it completely from your environment because it's so immediately toxic. It's just something we want to just reduce. We need to try to minimize it. Ideally, for people on this call, just pragmatic things you're doing day to day. Ideally, you're filtering the water. It doesn't take a lot to filter this stuff out. And the neighboring town to me that has a military base, which tends to be, areas with big fire training grounds where it's in the groundwater. It's 20 parts per trillion. Again, like Mark mentioned, we have these low detection limits, but that's we have this. We want to keep that below 70 generally in drinking waters, and now that limit's fluctuating, maybe even lower. So these are things, filter your water. It's not one of these chemicals that is, we think has massive immediate effects, but it's something that is bioaccumulative, and they call it forever chemicals because it breaks down very slowly. So it builds up in your body. We found this in, polar bears in the North Pole. It's everywhere, and it's in the blood because it doesn't stick in the fat like a lot of toxins. So I think it's just something that, we're pragmatic with it. Then there's the legal landscape, so now that you're starting to get some high profile cases and some case law precedent about big releases from airports and things like that. We had one of our clients, inadvertently had a dump, and it dropped, put 7 feet of foam on the nearby river. It drained out to it. But there have been lots of other releases from other hangars, and even military like fuel farms and things like that in the same airport. And then forensically, they're trying to figure out who's who. So there's really, I think it's just, it's something that's increasing in concern within the industry over time.
Well, and as it increases of concern, the states get more, I think, hopeful and advantageous to say, what can we do to regulate the process? What can we do to sue the major manufacturers? Give us a breakdown here as to what states are looking at this maybe more aggressively than others, and what our guys should be looking out for.
Yeah, unsurprisingly, I mean, this is one of those things that's, I wouldn't call it following the political divide, but the blue states tend to be a little more regulatory. So that's where we've seen some of this early legislation. It does vary state to state. You're not getting this clamp down from a federal level yet or anything like that. But, we see California and New York. And for example, there's a headline this week in Minnesota, outlawed, the use of this in cookware, for example. So you're seeing it state by state and right now, and it changes so much that we don't even try to publish within our industry who's doing what at the moment. We just follow it as it pops up by facility, by client. 10 to 15 states are now, outlawing the replacement of this, for firefighting foam. So it's something that's just kind of evolving that way. Where I'm at physically right now in Florida, not a big deal, right? It's not barely on the radar. You don't hear people discuss it much. In other areas where our clients are, especially in the Northeast, West Coast, it's a big deal. And we're having to move a lot quicker to get those foam stores and those firefighting systems retrofitted.
Just in this, 2017, there were 0 states, 0 policies. 2020, 13 states, 17 policies. And in 2025, 22 states, 30 policies. So it is, the train has left the station. This is more than likely going to get regulated in all the states. It's just a matter of time before that happens.
So part of my job is to obviously lobby Congress. And one of the things that we did with the Toxic Substances Reform Act back in 2017 was have one national standard that Congress would, essentially get passed and have the president sign a law. So that way all 50 states in theory are singing off the same sheet of music. It seems to me we're getting to that point with PFAS where the states are doing their own things. And while businesses are very much for state rights, fine, there's something to be said about the uniformity of having one mandate coming from Congress that everybody has to stick with, so the businesses can say, I know how to comply, and I'm not going state by state by state and seeing the administrative compliance costs going through the roof. Any thoughts on that? Do you guys feel like that's something we should? I mean, we've talked about it. We're kind of looking at doing it. Congress has done stuff legislatively through the Defense Department and stuff, but it really hasn't taken on any main true form legislatively in the Senate or House ever. So just was curious, do you guys feel like a more of a national type process versus a state by state is going to be a better way to go if it can actually happen that way?
Oh yeah, that make my life a lot easier. I wouldn't have to go through the the records every month to figure out, okay, this state has this new policy, or this other state has modified theirs and added something else. If there was one thing, one regulation out there that set the limit for everyone, that'd make life.
Right. Yeah, Steve.
I agree. Yeah, it would be nice. It'd be nice to see that at the federal level. And so instead, we're kind of watching this standard of care as you see the U.S. military move, for example. We're watching what they do, sort of establishing on a large scale a standard of care as they retrofit, hundreds of military facilities. We're doing things like that. But you're right, Eric. It'd be nice to see that at a federal level codified.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see, especially since the Defense Department's been pretty quietly, but actively saying, no, let's keep PFAS in place because it's in everything. I mean, from warships to tanks to you name it. So it's interesting conversation. So this kind of gets to the everyday chemical distributor company, the compliance concerns of what's in front of you right now. And, Mark, one of the things you talked about is the 7-step process to transition your foam system, fire suppression system. To walk us through what a distributor right now should be looking to do so it can better prepare itself for what ultimately could be happening, which is someone comes knocking on your door, local, state, federal, whoever it's going to be, you better be ready. So kind of walk us through what in your mind is what needs to be done.
Sure. Yeah, I'll go through the 7 steps and then maybe just a little detail on each of them. So, first step, you want to determine which type of firefighting foam they have there, because depending on what that is, it may or may not need to be replaced. Like, for example, if you have a high expansion system, and historically that has never been that has never contained PFAS. But if it's for sprinklers and it's a little bit older, more than likely it's going to have some PFAS in there. But you always want to look to see what you have and then reach out to manufacturer to make sure that that does contain the PFAS material. So the second step is, if you have that PFAS containing concentrate, you want to review the laws and regulations in your state, because like I mentioned, there are only 25 states that have laws or regulations right now. So your state may or may not be regulated. So you want to make sure that you know what's going on there. So for the third step, if you're required to change your foam concentrate, determine the best way to dispose of what you have. There are multiple things that you can do. So I've heard everything from, incineration to removing it from the system and storing it on property. You hear of deep well injection, solidification to a hazardous waste landfill, supercritical water oxidation. So there are a lot of options that you can use, but you just really want to make sure that you're working with the AHJ in your area to figure out what's best for you and what they'll approve of. Fourth step, you want to reevaluate the hazard that you have on hand. Some of these systems are put in with the hope of never activating and never being used. So you could have a system that is 20 years old, and in 20 years, maybe you've taken on another line of products, or you've gone from one size container to another. You might need to re-engineer your system to make sure the application densities are correct for what you have on hand now. For the fifth step, you want to select the appropriate foam concentrate based on that updated hazard analysis and your environmental needs. So you're going to kind of put two things together. So you're going to look at, my state is requiring this. My insurance agency is going to require a UL listing or FM approval. How do I find a foam concentrate that ticks both those boxes for them? Step 6, you're going to make the necessary changes to your foam system, whether it's removing a bladder tank or changing out a discharge device. There might be some changes that need to be made. And then the last is, you want to install the whole system and then commission it to make sure it's working correctly. And the last thing you want to do is just put this brand new system in and then forget to to turn a switch or a valve, and there needs to be a discharge, and you didn't commission at the end, so the valve's left closed and you're not getting any foam. So those are the steps that we've kind of identified as the main steps for transitioning your foam system.
That's good stuff. That's good stuff for sure. Thanks, Mark. We talked about just, the risks associated with PFAS contamination, and then the insurance industry and what our guys are seeing versus not seeing, and what they should be considering in terms of types of coverage. Talk to me what you guys are seeing with the different insurance providers. Not asking to name names, but what is it that the insurance industry is now looking at to say, hey, if you're providing this and it's got PFAS in some related shape or form, this is what you should expect. You guys seen a whole lot of changes that I guess are probably happening very often, but give us your feedback there if you don't mind. So what you're seeing from the industry at this point, at least on the insurance side.
It varies a lot. I mean, I'll take it. It varies a lot by industry. So, for example, we do a lot in the aviation industry, where that process that Mark just described is, basically what we go through for a replacement. But many times, some industries, like for example, aviation, which is different than chemical distribution, they're just removing foam entirely. You don't need foam anymore. The nature of transient aircraft storage and hangars, for example, certain applications. So we're seeing the insurers take basically different approaches in that industry, and it depends on the insurer. So we're talking to our clients, and for example, the people that insure their buildings and their facilities, they're happy to have foam because that's the one line of insurance they have. They want something that'll save the building. They don't care about the contents or the ramifications, for example, of a foam release, whether that has environmental impact from a PFAS, like a low expansion foam, or whether a high expansion foam, for example. They've had some terrible accidents with those. So the competing risk of actually having foam in those industries, like it results in different reactions by the insurance companies as to whether they incentivize it or not. And more the general chemical industry, like especially petrochem, they're whoever holds those environmental policies wants a non-fluorinated foam solution, and they want containment. So those are the things that they're looking for. Sometimes even if you have a PFAS containing based foam a little longer, a legacy foam, if you have fantastic containment and it's staying on site, something you feel confident you can treat, it still is a great firefighting foam. Of course, regulatorily, you may have to completely remove it. But until you do, a lot of times insurance will be less concerned if you're able to completely contain that on site because you still have good fire protection and you have good environmental containment. For example, like a big remote impoundment aligned pond and underground, like what they call like a swimming pool, a big concrete lined containment basin, something like that. So it just varies based on what they're insuring and based on the industry.
Interesting. Mark, any thoughts?
Yeah, I've heard of one situation where there was a facility that didn't necessarily have to be based on state law go away from PFAS foams, but the insurer said, we're not going to take on that potential liability if there were to be a discharge and it were not to be contained. So the option was either switch over to fluorine-free foams or not have coverage. So we've even heard it up to that point.
And it's frustrating because if you're, let's just take you're in a certain part of Texas, you've got a fairly conservative county, but you've got a local fire department that comes in, you've worked with, and they're like, no, you better have PFAS in your foam because we know it's the most effective way and the only effective way to get out of fire. But then the insurance industry is, no, we're not going to cover you if you do that. You're sitting at a stalemate. Do you want to piss off the local first responders, or do you want to sit there and find the best coverage insurance-wise? It's almost a no-win situation. I mean, how do you get around that? Is there any solution? You just got to navigate as best you can.
And that's pretty much it. You have to do the best you can because, in life, there are a lot of things, there are very few times, that you'll do something that makes everyone happy.
Yeah.
So it's just, with fluorine-free foams, there are application densities that are similar to fluorinated foams where they are going to work fairly similar. So it's really just about having the best high-quality foam product that you can have and making sure the design for the system is correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I agree with Mark on that. For example, they're doing some great work, some research in Texas. Dallas-Fort Worth Airport is where they do a lot of testing for a consortium called Last Fire, where they're testing these non-fluorinated foams. They're known by different monikers now and different acronyms, but something where you're not adding fluorine because fluorine-free could mean that even the water you're mixing it with has fluorine in it. Right. At the parts per trillion level. But these foams are getting a lot better, and they are getting to the point where a lot of them are drop-in replacements. Now, the manual firefighting techniques, what they're finding is they're going back to like what they did pre-1960s when they were using AFFF or film forming foam. They had like protein foams and mechanical foams. That's how the new ones really kind of work that way. So they're retraining firefighters. They are getting similar efficiencies in application volumes, what we call densities, how many gallons per square foot you have to put on a flammable liquid to extinguish it. They are finding these really, really good replacements, and we've got those now it's based on application. On certain chemicals, no. On certain chemicals, you're still needing twice as much non-fluorinated foam as you did the original one. But a lot of the basic ones, your hexanes, gasolines, and things like that, you've got drop-in replacements. So it's a matter of now the technology is changing so quickly. It's like, take a look at it, talk to the insurer, talk to, experts in the field, manufacturers and distributors like Mark, for example. We talk to people as engineers, and you just kind of find out what your options are, and they're getting better is the good news, because this research and the testing, the full-scale testing, the third-party witness testing by, things like Factory Mutual and Underwriter Laboratories, where they're setting complete fires and applying foam, are making good progress in showing complete replacements that'll satisfy both of those desires.
So, okay, and you talk about the pace by which new technology is being, and Mark, with your company in Perimeter in particular, give us when are we going to stop talking about this? When are the solutions clearly going to be 99 to 100% guaranteed, where historically, yes, we're going to have to deal with the process of what happened, and there'll be lawsuits, and we'll figure that out. But from moving forward, something that is there, whether it's multiple solutions, drop-ins, whatever the alternatives are going to be, when is this going to be stop being a conversation? I mean, I feel like we're getting so close, yet we're still so far away. And so I'm always curious to get take, especially with two folks like you guys that really know what's going on. Give us your kind of forecast here. No, we're not taking you to Vegas and asking you to, put the money down, but give us your 10 cents as to where you think we're going to be next 3-5 years when it comes to this topic. And are we really going to continue having it?
Yeah, sure. What they proverbial crystal ball is very hazy when it comes to fire protection chemistry. So, and the R&D that goes into it. Just want to just put out there that to get to the level of performance we got to with fluorinated product, that took about 60 years.
Yeah.
Right now, we're only into this about 20 years. So
Right.
we're pretty new in infancy stages of this, or adolescence, or however you want to take it. But I see that we've gone from having, one product maybe 8 years ago to now, the industry probably has 30 different products to choose from. There are probably 3 or 4 generations of products. So, I got a hard time putting an exact date on it, but I can tell you that every year that goes by, the products get better and better and better, until the industry finds, the quote unquote magic bullet for being successful on all types of fires. So, and at the same application densities, or even lower for that matter. So,
Yep.
I'm not going to say in 5 years we're going to be there, but we're going to be way closer then than we are right now.
Yeah. Gotcha. Well, I'd be remiss if we didn't talk about our partnership with Vertex and the fact that we now have Steve on the hook helping our members out when it comes to a PFAS audit service. You want to talk us a little bit more about what that offering is, Steve, and how our members can get in touch with you on it?
Absolutely, Eric. Yeah, we've been working with and you guys are doing a great job with this, but just trying to help members and people in the chemical industry. They're trying to make their businesses work day to day and not really have to delve into things like this, which are a lot of times a real nuisance to operations. We're just trying to help them, and it's a case by case basis. So we look at individual operators, distributors, which often have unique challenges. I mean, the members, listening to this call, where they have some of them have thousands of chemicals, so you don't know exactly what the hazard is. It's this huge family. Normally, we start out with a hazardous material inventory statement. We're finding these huge families of chemicals. We're working with, basically your members to identify what is the best option for them on a case by case basis. Whether it's a retrofit, maybe it's an alternate form of fire protection. Sometimes we like to, and Mark, you got to close your ears for this. Sometimes we like to take foam out of the equation completely if we can. If we can do a water only solution, if we could do a smaller containment area, if there's an appropriate dry chem, for example, a certain application, we'll do that. Otherwise, we want to retrofit when appropriate. But it's a case by case basis. So we do this evaluation. We go out. We spend a couple days at the facility. We really take a look at what they're doing. Advise them on not only what's the best thing to do with their phone, but maybe some tweaks they can make, storage heights, areas, containment areas, some other little things that are low hanging fruit to minimize this risk of both fire and foam, the competing risk of actually the foam itself. And we come together, we get together basically a report of recommendations on what if it was our facility. We look at it like it was our own, and what's an optimal solution for it, talk it through with the clients and help them figure this out.
Good stuff. Well, I know we've got some folks that have been interested in, so we're looking forward to working with you guys, and hopefully it'll be a good solution to any of the issues that our guys are undertaking right now. So we're kind of wrapping up time. I want to say thank you guys to both Steve and to Mark. These things can take on a life of its own, and it's good to get experts in to talk about exactly what's the here and now. As Mark said, the crystal ball is a little hazy, but we're hopeful that the true solutions, not that there aren't any right now, but the more ones that are dedicated to let's stop having this conversation so we can move on to other things, will hopefully be there next 3, 5, 10 years. I hear 60 and we're only 20 years into it, and I sit there and scratch my head, go, I may not be alive when the solution's around, but hopefully we'll get to something sooner than that. So guys, thank you for joining us today, and a big thank you to everyone tuning in. If you enjoyed today's discussion, please like, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you listen to your podcast. If you're interested in taking advantage of the Vertex evaluation services for exiting systems and analysis of alternatives offering, please visit the Ask website at auditsafetynow.com, and that's KNOW. Stay connected with ACD on social media as well. You can find us on LinkedIn at Alliance for Chemical Distribution and on X and Instagram at ACD_Chem, which is CHEM. We'd love to hear from you as well. Don't hesitate to reach out to us with story ideas, questions, or concerns. We can be reached at communications@acd-chem.com. For now, we'll catch you on the next season of ChemLine. Thanks for joining us today.
Axon is a proud supporter of the ACD and has truly enjoyed our partnership. Our underwriters have gone beyond industry standards, working with members and their brokers to bring insurance coverage exclusive to the ACD. We understand the chemical industry. We listen to our insureds, we leverage our experience, and we specialize in providing comprehensive and competitive insurance solutions.
Since 2017, Axon has worked with ACD leadership to address exposures unique to members. This has resulted in a program geared specifically towards you and includes enhancements like 10% credit applied to policy premiums, reimbursement of responsible distribution fees up to $5,400, around-the-clock emergency response services, and expert claim resources.
To learn more about Axon underwriting, visit us at axonu.com.